right, we are live. How's it going today?
Good, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing well. For those of you who don't know, I am joined today by Andrew from Cawood Publishing. I've done several videos on their book so far. You've seen me do the monsters of the city, the monsters of the underworld, the monsters of the Feyland, and most recently, have I done this one yet? Yeah, the monsters of the wilderness is the newest one. So, I asked Andrew to come on today and talk to us a bit about Cawood and their books and their publishing and some of their projects they've been working on. So, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Sounds good.
So, the Monsters of the Wilderness, your latest book, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about it. What I mean, one thing I've noticed about your books is, as opposed to just doing Monster Book 1, Monster Book 2, you've decided to do these themes based on location. So what brought about that idea?
Yeah, we just thought it would be a great way for DMs to, make it easier for them to populate whatever setting they're dealing with, and really more and more as we made the books. Our backers on Kickstarter and our customers, they more and more asked for really more of a campaign book. So that's really what they are. They're not just monster books.
Right.
As it went along, like the Underworld book, we started to add quite a bit more in terms of lore and in terms of more campaign resources, like encounter tables, and then as it went on with the city book, we added maps and we added more different regions and more tools for the Dungeon Master, adventure hooks. And so we've continued to do that. So the books really are campaign books and monster books.
Right. Yeah, I really like your little table. I mentioned this, I think, in the last video or two I did on your books, the little adventure hook table in the front. I find those very useful. Like, I play a game with my kids, and then when we're out at dinner, I'll just be like, give me a hook, and we come up with an adventure based on that hook. So anytime I can get good hooks, that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think they're really. I know when I started playing, back in the 70s, and I know a lot of those old resources, they'd have a lot of really useful tables like that, and I still use that, and I do the same thing. I don't always do it for the main campaign theme, but for parts of the adventure, sometimes I look on the tables, including the ones we've published. And I get a quick idea. I want to make sure, that's why I say we make practical, we make inspiring products, because I want things that Dungeon Masters are actually going to use. And I think there's lots of good ideas, but they're not all practical at the table. So that's what we want to try to do, is help people make their prep a lot easier and have things that you can just grab the book and you can just use it right then. Like you said, the city book, if you're doing an adventure and the party are in the market, you can just look in the market section of that book and just grab something right away that you need.
Yeah. Now, what another thing I noticed, a lot of your monsters feel like they're not a named NPC, but yet they're a proper noun. It's the hunter as opposed to hunter. It's the shaman. So you've kind of taken that spin. What brought that idea about?
Well, I always like the idea that the monsters are characters too. So, for example, a dragon can have tons of personality and really be almost like a cross between an NPC and a dragon. So we try to do that a lot. Try to give these really interesting characters that are also monsters. They have way more personality like that, a lot more depth. And at the same time, we still do have some creatures that are more generic. Like in the Feyland book, we have the giant dragonfly and the giant butterfly, which would be really useful mounts, I think, in that kind of world.
Right. So
we try to have some of that, but I do like having the creatures that have so much personality, like I think of right away the fortune teller in the city book. You could really make that, like, some of these creatures and characters, you could have them at the center of your your campaign.
Yeah, the fortune teller I liked a lot, is I felt like that can almost be like a fun recurring NPC. Sure, we have a
Yeah,
stat block in case stuff goes down, but I feel it's
yeah,
more of like this great NPC that the players might go and visit and can really prompt story hooks and quests, and maybe give them a bit of insight that they wouldn't have, or scam them and rip them off
yeah,
consistently.
yeah. Well,
So
and also, we want to make sure we have kind of more of a balanced book. So I think I was thinking the other day, I think actually we have more probably good creatures than any other publishers ever put out. So we do have mostly evil, nasty creatures and opponents, but we also make sure that the world is populated with some good creatures and heroes and neutral ones. And part of that is there for, like you say, if the party does decide to maybe get on the wrong side of the fortune teller, good luck.
yeah, exactly. Well, or you just have a bad party. Everybody's had a murder hobo party, or a rogue that decides to steal everything, right? And you don't want to steal from the fortune teller. That will be bad. So, I think out of all your books, I mean, I love them all, but I really think the city one is the one that connected with me the most, because you really focused on duality in that one.
Right.
It was here's sins, here's virtues, and everything had an opposite. It was very yin yang, right?
Right.
Tell me a bit about that one, because that definitely was the one that I think was my favorite.
Yeah, that one and the new one to me are my favorites too. Partly because the layout now with the new person we have, Gordon McAlpin, who does it, is I think just amazing. But yeah, the city one was interesting because when we were doing it, I thought about dividing it into districts to make it easier again for DMs to run their games and plan. But Travis, the artist, Travis Hansen, who does all the art so far in the series, he said, hey, why don't you have a sin tied into each district? And I said, oh, that's a great idea, because I always, the number 7 has quite a lot of power, mythologically, archetypally. So, and then I said, because I always like adding a certain amount of good creatures, and I'm interested in the more heroic story, even though I know there's lots of different tables. So I said, hey, that's a great idea, but I'm also going to tie in the virtue to each district. And then what we did was we had most of the creatures in each of those districts tied back into those sins and virtues. And part of it, like you said in your review, you're very perceptive of you. You said, some people are leaning away from alignment, and we're leaning hard back
into it. Yeah.
Because I think it's to a certain extent misunderstood, because people have got archetypes and tropes mixed up to a certain degree. Not everybody, and it's kind of part of our times where people say, like, there's two sides to racism, for example. There's not two sides. either you're racist and it's horrible, or you're on the other side of good. There's no in between. I think in our days, sometimes people say, like, for example, in the Game of Thrones world, in certain settings and stories, people will say, alignment and evil is relative. No, it's not.
It's relative to the individual, right? Like, Jaime Lannister doesn't think he's a bad person, but to society, right? He is.
He is.
And over time, we learn more about his character and we kind of understand him better. But I mean, that's what makes a very, deep character. But when you look at somebody who pushes a little kid out of the window to hide the fact that he's having an affair with his own sister, that's evil. That's evil. Bad. That is not objectively bad. That is bad.
Yeah. And some of those evil creatures and people 100% know they're evil.
Right.
Some of them for sure. Some
devils, demons, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them know, like you say, devils, demons, dragons, especially kind of chaotic evil creatures who are completely violent, and like they know they're horrible. Like this is who they are. They just believe, like, for example, chaotic evil, you believe in using anything to get what you want, including violence. And you don't back down for that. Well, that's straight up, there's no. So to me, it was like that book in a way is making it very clear. Yes, like for sure there are grays in the world, and there are grays in D&D, but there's still good and evil. And
Right.
if you don't have a good and evil conflict, for the most part, the story's not going to be very good. Sometimes a writer can be quite subtle, and you can have a story with more grays in it. But in general, I think that heroic adventure, that's really what D&D was founded on.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we go back to the '80s, right? The satanic panic of the '80s, and I remember, my mom, and I really was more of a '90s person, so this more happened like Magic the Gathering for me. But it was still a thing with D&D, where it's like, oh, there's demons and devils and stuff. That's it. I'm like, yes, and we're going out and defeating those things for good.
Exactly.
It's not about just I mean, a movie's got bad guys in it. Does that mean that people watching the movie are bad? No, we're rooting for the hero. In this case, we are the hero. Sure, we do have evil campaigns, and I think I mentioned in my review of the City book that this would be also a great book to use if you're running an evil character campaign, because you have all these stat blocks for good, monsters, good NPCs, good monsters that you could fight against. And I thought that was super great. You're right. I think I mean, sure, we've got celestials and stuff like that, but it's fairly limited in a lot of the material out there of a good stat block that we can go fight. So that book was a great split of both. You mentioned Travis, your artist. Tell me a bit about how you landed that deal, because for those of you, what, I'm gonna switch over here so I can show a little bit. For those of you who haven't seen these books, the art is phenomenal, right? The art is, and I brought up my favorite monster in your new book. Tell me, where did you get the inspiration for Murder Hornet? Did you just make that up? Or?
That actually, I mean, the people who live up where we do, I live in Vancouver, Canada, just north of Seattle. So anybody in the Pacific Northwest in the last year or so will know 100% what that is.
Oh, we all know what Murder Hornets are.
So, and I remember this summer, my wife said, "How will I know if I see one?" And I said, "You'll know." You'll know. They're enormous. So I figured we had to put that in this book.
Yeah, you've done that a lot, though. You've gotten a lot of, like, I love the Fae book, felt very Alice in Wonderland. You had a lot of Alice in Wonderland type characters. So you've done a good job bringing stuff from real life and pop culture and popular fiction into your books. But for those of you who haven't seen it, I'll show a few of the images here. Tell me a bit about the relationship with Travis and how you got him to do the art, because this is definitely not the style of art that I would say you typically see in most of your D&D monster books. It's usually more gritty, more realistic, more Elmore kind of art, which I love. I mean, Larry Elmore is like my favorite fantasy artist of all times. I love the Four Horsemen of Second Edition.
Right.
But this is so unique and so fun.
Yeah. I also like the classic guys. I mean, I have right here in my office, I have 3 Elmore prints. There's one right behind me.
I noticed it.
The Paladin, from Dragon Magazine. And I love, Errol Otis and Clyde Caldwell and Jeff Easley, all those guys. So, and art to me, again, is a huge part of fantasy, huge part of D&D. So after we'd done a few books, and then I found Travis's art, and he's not. You said he's our artist. He's very much his own artist. He does a comic everyday life of the party online on Facebook and on Twitter. He has another comic called The Beam, which he did a few years ago. And I found his art, and right away, because he doesn't just do his life of the party is a bit more cartoony comic,
right?
But he actually does other styles. So his Bean is a little more realistic. So that's what I was kind of looking at, is the style he does in the Bean. And when I saw it, I thought right away, imagine doing a monster manual like that. And originally he did one image for our Hirelings and Henchmen's book, and then he did one for an adventure that we wrote. And then I talked to him about doing the Feyland book once I got the idea. And again, it suits his style. We like a lot of creatures that are very original, very, often whimsical. I liked your term you used on one of your videos when you said it was Disney on acid.
Well, it's Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, I guess it was kind of Disney on acid.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, those are our. We have a lot of the same inspirations. Like definitely Alice in Wonderland. Definitely the Ghibli movies from Japan, like Totoro and Howl's Moving Castle. He likes all those classic D&D creatures. So this art to me, like, again, it's fun. It's not as kind of gothic horror focused, which he and I are not we're not really into that as much. So we think our art is quite accessible. Like if you wanted to have kids look at a lot of these books.
Yep.
Again, it's not for really young kids, but it has that, like you say, Alice in Wonderland sort of feel. And if you look through all the books, the constant theme is that we have Fey creatures throughout these books, even if it's not Feyland.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not Fey, they're not far off usually. So yeah, we were just a huge fan of his art. And then it just happened that when I talked to him about it, we found out we're pretty much the same age. We're both stay-at-home dads at that point. We're both on the West Coast. We both have the same goal. We don't want to put out that like sort of horror fantasy art. We want to put out some more heroic images, and we want to have meaning in the books. I had somebody who interviewed me about the Feyland book, and he was so surprised that we'd done research and that Travis as well, has a lot of depth, and you can find a lot of Easter eggs in the art and in the writing. Because we don't want to just put something out there that's popular. We're trying to make something creative and unique.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned kids. I had the Feyland book sitting on my desk one day, and my daughter walks in. She goes, "Ooh, black unicorn!" Right away, right? It was her favorite thing. Wow. I was in one of my Facebook D&D groups, and someone's like, I'm running a game for my kid, I think 10, 11 years old. So I'm looking for some monsters that maybe are a little bit more appropriate and this and that. And I directed them right to your books. Right. I'm like, they're monsters like any others. But I think if you start showing the art and stuff, it just has that more whimsical feel. It feels more accessible to all ages, regardless of the fact that it's still a demonic spider. It's still, there's still these hard monsters, these evil things. But yeah. I feel like the art puts this twist on it that makes it feel accessible to all ages, or most ages. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, part of that, too, is we have a lot of humor in the books, and Travis has a lot of humor in his art.
Yep.
So, like, for example, the example I would use is like Professor Snape in Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. The way that Alan Rickman portrayed that character, he made him more palatable, especially to kids, because he was so over the top. There's a way, I think, there's a balance when you're working with darker images, with evil creatures, where you can make it like we're not trying to, we're not trying to hold those evil creatures up and, say, these are wonderful creatures. The evil creatures we have, we're trying to say they're really horrible.
Yeah.
And the reason that D&D is fun is you get to defeat these creatures, or outwit these creatures, just like any fairy tale or great story. If there wasn't a good challenge, it wouldn't be really interesting.
Right.
So, I had a dad who used the Feyland book to homeschool his kids, actually. And his daughter, they actually got a hold of me once, and she said, "My favorite creature is the royal stag." And I said, "Me too." Yeah.
That's awesome. So, yeah. So you have now, I believe, 4 monster books, correct? Yeah. And you also have your campaign setting, the World of Mirror, right?
Right.
So has that been around longer, or the monster books came around first?
Good question. I actually started with Mir because I just started playing D&D after about 30 years, and I started with a village and ended up creating a continent for my players in my home group here in Vancouver. And those were those players who said, "You should publish this. Like, it's so detailed, it's so unique." So I did that, and that's how we really started. And in some ways, it's come full circle because the newest book, the Wilderness book, a lot of that has connections back to the world of Mir. I mean, even the character on the front, that's Oswald Mir. That's the wizard that the world is named after. So the setting came first, and then hopefully this year or next, we'll do a book that completes that setting. We've published 3 continents so far, but I want to skip ahead and do a book that has all 9 continents in it.
Very cool. Yeah. I have not personally got to check it out yet, but it's definitely on my list to check out. So you have that, and then I think you have a few published adventures for it as well, right?
Yeah, we have a whole campaign from 1st to 20th level on DriveThruRPG or our website that is linked into the world of Mir. That was the first campaign I ran in 5th edition. And yeah, and then we have a few adventures on the DM's Guild. And we're probably going to move more into that. We're going to do a Kickstarter for at least one more monster book next month.
Okay.
And that should be like the last one. It's going to be about 120 monsters, another campaign book style, another theme. And we'll announce that very soon. Travis is actually finishing up the art for the Kickstarter promo right now.
Okay.
So I should be able to announce that in a week or 2.
That'd be awesome. I can't wait to see what it's about.
Yeah. But I think in the future we might do more adventures, maybe like the core adventure books, that sort of style, like campaign books with adventures. That's probably an area we'll move to.
Did you mention, or no, I might have missed it, who did the art for the World of Mir book?
The World of Mir is a painter here in Vancouver called Alex Walton.
Okay.
And he was the first artist that I worked with that I realized we need some illustrations, images to start with. And I just happened to know him because I know a kids books writer here, and he recommended him. And there's some of my favorite images still. They're watercolor paintings that he did. And one of them is on the cover of the World of Mir with the floating castle.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we worked with a few artists all over the world, actually.
I think we lost some audio.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Oh, okay. I said we worked with artists from all over.
Yeah.
I think we've worked with 5 or 6 artists so far.
Very cool. Let's see here. So we got the 4 monster books, we got the World of Mir, we have the adventures.
Yeah.
Are you looking to expand into anything new, like anything outside of that? Any supplement type material or anything like to expand?
Right. Well, we have done a lot of Dungeon Master handbooks, so we have a ton of books with non-player characters with NPCs.
Those are always good. Those are always good.
I use those basically every game I play. Yeah. I have one of those books with me. And we have books filled with tables of encounters and resources, critical hit tables, game hints for Dungeon Masters. So, like I said, we're probably, we're looking at, adventure books for the future. We could do a large book with non-player characters with Travis's art. That would be pretty cool.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot on the plate. Like I pretty much know what I'm doing for about a year and a half. So yeah, we'll see where things go. And I've done a lot of books with groups of artists as well and writers. So I've been a part of that too. There's a few collections of monsters and magic items on the DM's Guild that we've done.
Okay. Is it published under Cawood or is it published under something else?
You can find those with my name, but one of them is Artifacts of the Guild with a massive collection of magic items.
I think I have that one, actually. I think I bought that a while ago.
So if you look in there, it doesn't say who made what magic item, but one of them I made was the Baldur's Gatehouse.
Okay.
which is a miniature of Baldur's Gate. And then when you're out in the wilderness or whatever, you can actually use a command word to create this gatehouse for you and it comes with some guards and
That's awesome.
supplies. And another one I put in there was the deck of a few things.
Okay.
So in the city book, I put the duck of many things, of course. But in the magic item book, I put a deck of a few things. So it's like the deck of many things, but not so intense. So yeah, and then there's the Monsters of the Guild, which was one of the first collections that a bunch of us got together, a bunch of writers got together. And on there I have the Chart Attack, which is a map that basically teleports people into the map and sends them somewhere onto the map.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I might have to use that.
Yeah. And then there's also a book about feats that Gordon McAlpin organized.
Okay.
There's a bunch of writers on there that we put some kind of ridiculous feats. Like one of them on there for mine was social distance as a feat. So you get a bonus to your constitution. I think you get like a negative modifier to your charisma.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so we had things like that. So yeah.
So I think a lot of people, especially now, 5e, right? You and I have been playing D&D since back in the AD&D days, but a lot of people nowadays, with it becoming so popular, I think a lot of people want to start trying to publish, get into the industry. And
right.
I think it's somewhat becoming saturated, right? There's a lot of people doing it. There's a lot of great writers out there. There's a lot of good companies out there. I feel like there's a new Kickstarter I want to back every day.
Right.
How did you get into it? Have you been doing it a while? Did you work for another company? Did you just start with DM's Guild and then do your own thing? How did you make this leap into the industry?
Sure. Well, I did do in university. I mean, I've done a few careers, but one of the things, one of my first degrees was in English literature. So I have been around that kind of world for a long time, and it was very much a part of my family. Like my uncles published, my brothers published. But my main time where I sort of got to hone a lot of the skills was as a teacher. I was really more of a storyteller than a teacher. And I would create all these really immersive stories for my students. And I worked with kids from basically like 2 to 18 at different times. So after I did that, I came back to D&D, and I just came in at a really good time because those people had just recommended I publish The World of Mir. I put it together, I put it on drive-through. Right after that, the DM's Guild started. So I realized I had all these resources, tables for encounters and our critical hit tables. And I realized I could package those into books and they'd be really useful for DMs. Like they saved me hours and hours.
Right.
So I packaged those, put them on the DM's Guild, and very quickly got a bit of a following. Back then, the Guild used to really help out a wide variety of writers.
This is like 2015-ish, is that right?
2016, I think.
Okay.
Pretty sure it was 2016, beginning of 2016. And so after that, we started making more and more handbooks that would be useful for people and a few adventures. And the really big change was the idea for the Feyland book, because there were so few Fey in 5e. And to me, the Fey are a very much a core part of fantasy and D&D. And so we saw a whole lot of creatures and possibilities that no one had done for 5th edition yet. And that book is still the most popular book we've done by far, and some people's favorites. Even though, like I say, I think, the layout and the editing has got much better as we've gone along.
Right.
Especially the last 2 books.
Mm-hmm.
But the Feyland book, once I had that in my hands, I knew, okay, this is what I've been building towards. I didn't know that. It just had happened very organically. So yeah, it was just the timing. And I think sometimes these days people are told to listen too much to other people as creators.
Right.
And if I'd done that, we never would have,
Yeah.
we never probably would have published very much at all.
Yeah. No, it's
So
it's a very unique product for sure.
Yeah, well, I think in general, I think there are great creators out there and to come. And, I think it's important that we, really speak our own voice and do something very creative and not try to, I mean, I'll tell you a little inside secret. There are people in the industry who just look for what title is going to be popular, what cover is going to be popular. They actually research it. They actually research what monsters are popular and should be in an adventure. And if you look on the main two sites, a lot of the titles are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's great when people really try to break out of that and they're just really a creator, not just trying to market something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, good art definitely goes a long way, right? That's the first thing you see. So having good cover art, you can't undervalue that. But I know what you mean, because it seems like the latest book comes out and it's whatever, Waterdeep, and then suddenly the market's flooded with Waterdeep this and Waterdeep that, and which is great and useful. But it's like, okay, but I don't want to just play Waterdeep,
Right.
It's nice to see just unique stuff, new worlds, new settings, new just I guess the stuff that appeals to me as a consumer the most is a very good fleshed out campaign setting if I'm looking for that,
Right.
or really good tools, right, for a DM. Obviously your monster books are great. I'm a big fan of Nord's products, because Nord doesn't even do, I mean, they have a couple monster books, but they do more stuff that's geared towards tools for DMs. Here's a book about traps. Here's a book about
Right.
crafting. Here's a book about creating cities. Stuff like
Right.
that stands out, right? It's different
Yeah.
than the rest of the pack. And so I think that's why I'm glad the first book that you ever sent me was the city one, because it was
Right.
the probably the single most unique monster book I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Wow, thanks.
yeah, well, I mean, it is though, right? I mean, the whole the duality, the sins, the virtues, the districts, the themes. It was a very heavy themed book, and the fact, like I
Right.
said, you leaned right into that alignment thing, and so you did a lot of stuff that nobody else does, and it makes it stand out.
Yeah, thanks. I think and that's what I like. I like the same thing, in terms of something different. And I don't think you need to break, again, the idea of archetypes. Like, an archetype is something that's permanent. It's never going to change. So, this element, this idea of the hero or the dragon or the moon or the mother or father or the reluctant hero or the fallen
Right.
king. These things will never change. It doesn't matter if it's 1,000 years from now or 1,000 years ago, or if it's a game from the 70s or a game now, right? So I think if you do those things, honestly and uniquely, I think just because, for example, there were a lot of adventures came out about the frozen kind of world, or the Nordic and the Viking kind of world. I think people shouldn't be shy about staying away from that, because it can still be done, because it has that clean, clear archetype, and that's pure. And if you do something unique there, it can still be done well. That's why people are still making D&D adventures. What is it, 50 years now, pretty much, from, because it's the same. No, maybe not 50.
It's
40
coming up
years.
on it, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting close to 50 years. People can still make great D&D adventures and monster books and resources, because there's such rich ground there, right? Such rich territory. And that's why now, when things go kind of away from the classic stuff, I actually love it, because now we have more territory to explore that somebody has left behind, like the Fae creatures. I don't know why there wasn't a focus on it. I know in original D&D, it was always part of the stories, and there's some old adventures that are based around Alice in Wonderland that Gary Gygax did. The Land Beyond the Magic Mirror, I think, is one. I can't remember the other one right now. I have one of them right here. Dungeon Land, I think the other one is called. Yeah. So the fake creatures and that sort of whimsy has always been part of D&D. It's not the only thing, and personally, I love dungeon crawls.
Right.
And I'm happy.
Dungeon crawls done right.
Yeah, exactly.
Dungeon crawls need to be done right.
Exactly.
Otherwise
and it's a
tedious.
different game now. You can't. People aren't playing all day. Most people anymore, and they're not playing for, 8 hours like back in the 70s and 80s where games went on. The games in general are shorter, I think, now, and there's more, obviously more role playing, and I think the stories have got. Well, I was going to say the stories have got better. Maybe the stories at the table have got better, because I still like the older adventures better.
Yeah, I like who was it? Goodman remaking a lot of the old adventures for 5e and releasing those sets and stuff. Those have been really cool. I personally convert a lot of old stuff. Like I've converted some Dragonlance. I've converted. I did what's the Underdark set from first edition, Descent into the Depths.
Oh yeah.
I converted that to 5th edition, and like the very first 5e campaign I ran, I just took parts of it. Right, I converted it and I took parts of it because it fit the adventure I was running. And those ones are definitely, I think, some timeless stuff. But I do like that people are I think leaning into the role play a bit more these days. I think it makes it a little bit more fun and silly, and just laughing at the table as opposed to combat.
Right.
So I think I feel like the game has evolved and is finding this very nice, happy place right now. Like we're kind of getting to this spot where it's grown as a hobby, and it's evolved a bit into a really cool spot where we can still grab those old stuff and we can throw some modern 5e twists into them, and it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think I think you can add. It's like basically a good adventure movie for me, a good action movie. Mm-hmm. I still mostly want action, but I want there to be a good story, and it'd be great if there's like some kind of twist and mystery.
I want to have an anxiety attack through the entire game is what I want. I want to be anxious the entire time. I always want to feel like some doom is imminent the entire time I'm playing. That to me, that's the best part. If I leave a session, I'm like, I need a drink. Then it was a good session. I just want to be stressed.
We definitely have some creatures like that for you. I know when I first I know the Basilisk in the core books, to me, is kind of underwhelming. So we made a giant Basilisk in the Phalan book. And I know when I had that coming through underneath a building where I had some characters, a party was adventuring, high level too. They were getting extremely scared.
I have the PDF open right now for Monsters of the Wilderness, and I had this image up earlier for, I'm going to say it wrong, the Arborean?
Yeah, the Arborean, yeah.
I'll show everybody this real quick. This thing is huge. It's like a giant evil, moose? Or I don't know what it is, but it's absolutely horrifying. Like, you see the two characters sitting here hiding under a rock looking scared, and this thing just wandering through. It reminds me of the, you remember that old, I want to say it's either an Elmore or maybe it was one of Easel's paintings from the cover of Dragon magazine with the giant lurking in back, walking through the bushes, and the guy unconscious. It kind of reminds me of that with this thing like walking back through the tree line.
Yeah. So that book, the new book we have for each of the wilderness regions, we have a titan, a monstrosity, absolutely enormous titan for each region that you could use. So the Arborean is the one for the forest, and it's a handful.
Yeah, it's CR20.
CR20. Yeah, it has frightful presence like a dragon, but it also has this strange euphoria breath that will that's sort of like confusion. And then, of course, it has, its massive hooves and bite to attack. And And then it's got legendary actions as well, including just stomp.
Which is 3d10 plus 7 bludgeoning.
Yeah.
With a plus 14 to hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
real quick, since you just brought it up, and I meant to ask you about this earlier. So
Sure.
we talked about how the city book was sins and virtues. This book, you said each region has 4 archetypes essentially, right? You have like the monstrosity. You've got the what is it here? Like you've got Baby Yaga here. So like you said, you kind of broke. Like,
okay.
How'd you organize the regions of this book?
Sure. So the book is divided into 7 regions. So you have like ocean, mountains, forest, etc. Each region has a titan to start, like this massive Arborian. And then the titan also is connected to a wizard. So the story is about a wizard who got kicked off the Wizard Council. And the Wizard Council has a wizard in each of these regions. So in each region, you have the Titan, who's also connected to the wizard. So they have some kind of relationship there. And most of these wizards are evil, but not all of them. And then there's a collection of other creatures that suit that region. And then we also have at the back, we have the stat blocks for Oswald Muir and his family and a backstory, so you can sort of find out about, who he was and who he is. And at the beginning, we have an extra stat block for the first creature that came through these portals, which is how the curse came onto the land. So that's why the book is called Oswald's Curse. So a lot of the creatures in the book came through portals from other places, or they're affected by energies that came through. And then a few are just put into those areas because they suit it. So we have a race of people who live in the, or not a tribe of people, a group in the north, and we have a group in the desert. And
I noticed you included a map in this one too.
Yeah, we have a map for our world of Mir at the very back. So as you read it, you can learn a little bit about Mir, because this wizard, again, him creating all these portals has really changed that whole world, because now all of a sudden you can travel from continent to continent, you can travel to other worlds, other planes, but also creatures from other planes or from Phaland or the underworld can travel to Mir. So it's really about how one person has changed the world. And this book sort of explains why he changed the world and what he's trying to do. Basically, he's opened Pandora's box and he's now trying to figure out what he can do about it.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, the newest book is Monsters of the Wilderness that we've been seeing here. You can pick this book up from your website, World of Mir, right?
Yeah, worldofmir.com. We have the PDF on the website. Or if you want printed, hardcover, or softcover, or the PDF, you can go to drivethroughrpg.com as well.
Yeah, definitely recommend it. And for those of you who've never done PODs, the quality is fantastic. They really do. I think they offer, a couple different qualities too. So very, very good. I have not had a bad experience with a POD yet. So definitely worth checking out. Andrew, thank you for coming on. Thank you for chatting with me.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. This has been awesome. Finally, I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got around to it.
Yeah, it's good to meet you online.
Yeah. Well, everybody, I think that's going to wrap us up for today. So thanks for joining us. Stay tuned this week for a new video on Thursday. And until next time, roll those dice. And